Hey everybody, Wesley Source with the Tucson Tasty Show. Today we're at Whiskey Del Bac, where we get to sit down with not only one of the founders, but the head distiller. And stay tasty, Tucson.
Well, Whiskey Del Bac was founded by myself and my daughter, Amanda, really with the goal of producing a single malt whiskey that is truly from the Sonoran Desert. My wife, Elaine, had this idea to dry malt over a mesquite fire instead of a peat fire like they do in Scotland. And so when she came up with this idea, it just kind of really captivated me, having grown up in the desert and loving the Sonoran Desert so much. And so, yeah, learned how to, long learning curve, but learned how to malt, learned how to distill up to a certain level. Mark is a many times over better distiller than I ever was. But anyway, that's the thumbnail sketch. Whew, boy, I'm going to turn that over to you, Mark, because we've won a bunch of awards over the years. And so the latest few?
Yeah, so we have won quite a few, which is, very flattering and always cool to be able to point out. Some of our most recent ones, the TAG International Spirits Awards in Las Vegas, we won Best in Show. That was Ode to Isla, I believe, got Best in Show for American Single Malt. A couple of platinums. None of our spirits won anything less than a gold in that competition. The American Craft Spirits Association Awards earlier this year, we brought home 5 golds, I think. The only ones that didn't get golds, unfortunately, were Sentinel and Frontera, but we were this close to getting golds on them. So yeah, it's been really nice and really humbling over the years. We've got a couple of double golds from the San Francisco competition. Yeah, we'd actually have to bust out a list,
yeah,
I think.
And lots of press,
yes.
Lots of great national exposure and some international exposure. So yeah, and going back to your original question about Whiskey Del Bac, and it's been, so we're all about a sense of place, and it's been really fun and rewarding to represent Tucson in this kind of quirky way. A single malt from Tucson. It's just been so cool. So I was actually born in a hotter desert than this. I grew up till I was 11 years old in Palm Springs, moved here when I was 11, and just really fell in love with this place. The flora and the fauna are so unique and exotic. In the desert over there in Palm Springs, we didn't have javelina, we didn't have Gila monsters. There's so much diversity here. We're kind of a subtropical, we're the northernmost region for a lot of plants and animal species. And so I just fell in love with the desert. And so, yeah, it's a magical place. Baja, Arizona. It's a magical place. Well, I'll talk a little bit and then I'll turn it over to Mark. But mesquite is an aroma that pervades our region. Mesquite smoke, I should say. I mean, we not only do we barbecue with it, but we burn it in our fireplaces on cold winter nights. And when we're having one of our many festivals downtown, mesquite smoke just lingers over the whole downtown. And a desert, if you're camping in the desert, which we do not infrequently, that's a component of that whole experience, desert camping. So that's the mesquite smoke, okay? And then Mark, do you want to talk a little bit more about like how the desert, how our climate and environment affect what we do?
Yeah, definitely. So, we're mostly known for our mesquite offerings. It's kind of our calling card. It's where we rose to prominence. But one of the things that we're very proud of, and one of the things we really like to emphasize, is every single aspect of the desert impacts every whiskey that we produce, even the ones that don't have any mesquite in them. And that starts at the very beginning. We specifically will, when we're creating our beer to ferment, which will eventually become our whiskey, we use hot water to extract higher tannins. That higher tannin punch, again, is accentuated by our aging later on. So we use hot water for higher tannin to be pulled out of that malt during the mash-in process. We use a yeast strain that is specifically bred for 100% malt, but also really warm temperatures. So we will ferment our first 24 hours at 85 degrees Fahrenheit, which is very warm. It produces a lot of really interesting ester profiles, and you get these lovely like tropical notes from that warmer temperature. Double copper pot distillation, we're doing very narrow cuts on there because we want that barley, that malt flavor to come through, and also those flavors we've developed during fermentation. And then we go into small format barrels, what we call quarter casks. And they're 15-gallon barrels, and so you have more surface area of the spirit coming to more surface area of the wood. And we always like to say we're riffing on the Scottish model because off-grain fermentation, double copper pot distillation, these are Scottish processes. In Scotch, you go into used cooperage. For us, we go into brand new American White Oak Medium Plus Toast No. 3 char. What happens then is you get, one, a lot of interaction with that spirit into the oak. When you have a 30 to 40 degree shift in a single day, like we do here in the Sonoran Desert, that ethanol heats up, it pushes into the wood. As it cools, it pulls out. So we have so much interaction with that wood that we end up with these really impressive multi-layered flavors in a shorter amount of time. And so it's fun talking to other distillers in other areas of the country because they'll be like, man, it must be a nightmare making whiskey in the desert. And it is in some ways, but it's those things that are challenges that make the whiskey a desert whiskey, those bigger flavors, those bolder profiles.
Well, so we really wanted to express where we're from. We didn't want to get hokey with cowboys on the label or anything. And actually, so naming our brand after our Spanish mission here, San Javier del Bac, was also my wife's idea. And so San Javier del Bac translates to Saint Xavier. Del is Spanish for of the, and then a Bac is a Tohono O'odham word for where there's surface water along the Santa Cruz River. And it was translated to us as place where the river reappears in the sand. And so San Javier del Bac was Saint Xavier of the place where the river reappears in the sand. And so we became Whiskey Del Bac, which I love the little notion that that's a trilingual brand. And the blend of cultures here in Baja, Arizona has always been important to our region, actually, because it enriches kind of the way we perceive things, having all the different cultures here. So yeah, there's more that I wanted to say, and maybe I'll think of it later, but yeah, okay. Well, I'll start with Arizona, because really the bulk of our sales are in our home state. But Mark, do you want to address that, since you're dealing with that a lot more than I am?
Yeah. So as Stephen had mentioned, one of the things that we're obviously really proud of is, the majority of our distribution is within the state of Arizona. And we are a love letter to the Sonoran Desert, a love letter to Arizona, and so it seems fitting that would be where so many of our customers are. What I think is a testament to the story that the desert has to tell and the appeal of the desert Southwest is it resonates beyond Arizona. We got into Colorado a little over a year ago, and you saw that Stephen has always said that was one of the big markets that we had hoped to get into, and the reception there was amazing. And California, I think, is our second biggest market after Arizona. And to see where we can expand, and to see, obviously, one, it's really cool when you're a creator to see people vibing on what you've created and to see that love of it. And then to me, it's even cooler to see that it's not just our product, but it is the whole story that resonates. It's that idea of, we tend to be associated with agave spirits, with our proximity to Mexico, and then seeing people's eyes get open on, oh, not only is this a really good whiskey, this is a really good whiskey that is an Arizona whiskey.
Yeah, and so we are distributed. We have distributors in like 14 states.
Yeah.
And then we have the ability through a third-party platform to ship into like 40 states.
Yeah.
The brainchild of this whole project is our Mesquite Dorado. We're trying to, by the way, push that term mesquited, not peated, into the national vocabulary. It's gaining great traction. So that's the reason we started this whole project. And so I guess that would be the one. We do have a great lineup. Our unsmoked classic is modeled after a Scotch from the Speyside region of Scotland, where they don't use any peat to dry their malt, or much peat. And we have we've got our global cask collection. We have distillers cuts that we release, special releases that we do 2 or 3 every year. So there's lots in the lineup.
Classic is a good introductory for bourbon drinkers, we've discovered, when we will have people who come in who aren't super familiar with American single malt whiskey. They tend to be, really heavy on the bourbon side. Classic is usually what we'll present to them first, because it doesn't have that smoke component, which can be kind of controversial. But because we are using that new American oak, you do get those distinctly historic bourbon notes, those vanillins, that heavy caramel.
Yeah, and the mesquite influence is very much softer on the palate than peat. And it doesn't give you those medicinal notes that the peat gives you, which many people around the world love. Other people don't love it so much. Yeah, yeah, same here.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love heavy peated scotches. I would always encourage people, if you haven't come to the distillery, you should pay us a visit. One of the things that we are very proud of, and we take pains to be, is transparent. Unfortunately, there's some not great players within the industry that maybe have some deceptive marketing, or their story isn't exactly what they tell you isn't exactly what the real story is. And so one of the things that we're very proud of is we are very transparent. We do offer tours multiple times throughout the week. You get a peek behind the curtain to see how every single one of our whiskeys is made. You can also settle down and sample all of them. And our tour guides are very knowledgeable. And so that's usually my pitch, is if you want to see how it's made, we would love to have you come through. And we have extended, shameless self-plug, we actually have extended hours now, and we have added a cocktail menu for the first time. So we are also encouraging people to kind of join us as a third space as well.
If I could just add one thing, it's also very fun to be a part of the Tucson kind of creative sector. We do a lot of collaborations with breweries, with Monsoon Chocolate, with all kinds of different creators. And Tucson is a very creative place. It's really kind of amazing how many ideas pop into people's heads, and then they go on and pursue that endeavor and make it a business, or the arts in Tucson are really vibrant. Visual arts, theater, music. Even our science community is like super creative. So Tucson is a really fun place to be. We do have two distillery cats too that are also quite charming.
Yes.